Hello and welcome to Friday with Fran. I feel like it's been longer than a week that we were here last time together, but it really only has been from last Friday to this Friday. But I don't know about the rest of you, but I've had a super crazy week. It's been a lot of up and downs. So I'm hoping that the rest of you have had all ups and that everything is rainbows and unicorns and candy falling from the sky and whatever all the other good things are.
Rainbows and unicorns, huh?
Okay. Yeah. So Fran, has that been your week? Have you been having rainbows and unicorns all week?
No, I think I've been searching for the rainbow, and I've seen the back end of the unicorn.
Oh, wow. That's not good. So let us know if you're here with us. Tell us #live or say hi and let us know where you're watching from. And also just a reminder, if you are watching from my Facebook group, you need to either give StreamYard permission to post your profile picture and your name, or every single time you post, you need to tell us who you are, because otherwise it just comes up as Facebook user. StreamYard and Facebook have that agreement that they will not post without your permission because it is from a private group. So, the back end of the unicorn. Wow.
Yeah. Was that too? I'm sorry.
No,
I am where I am.
Right. Hey, I don't think we're anything but honest in this when we do this every week. So, I mean,
yeah, and pretty unfiltered.
Yeah. Yeah.
So okay. So that my thought process, when I randomly sent you the text that we were so in sync with each other.
Yep.
Fork in the road. And everyone always talks about the road less traveled when you're thinking about choices and those kind of things. But I was even thinking, well, what about going off-roading?
Yeah.
What about not even going on the road that's less traveled? What about creating your own road?
Right. Forging your own path. Yeah.
So that was my random thoughts.
Yep. And when I got that text from you, I was literally picking up my phone to send you a text, and then it popped up that I had one from you, and I was thinking paperwork. And so when I read your comments, I thought, well, yeah, you might need a map. You might need the right map, because if you are going to go down the road that's traveled the most, but you don't have a map, you could still get lost. You could still take wrong turns. I actually had an experience where I had to use Google Maps. Yesterday, I was going to an area that I had not been before, so I had to use that map. And yeah, I feel like a lot of families, well, actually, everybody in the last year, I think across the world, has taken a different path than what they thought they would have to take.
Yeah, because I don't think it was in anyone's agenda to be isolated in some form or fashion.
Right. And so what would you call that? Would that have been off-roading? Because nobody had ever been down that path before.
I would call it a roadblock.
Okay.
We hit a roadblock. I mean, literally ran into it. There was no warning. Well, okay, there might have been a bit of a warning, but when the shutdown happened, it happened. Boom.
Yeah, and you get signs usually before you hit a roadblock or a construction zone. So I think that still follows.
How many people pay attention to those signs?
Well, now we might be talking about road rage, because I'm one of those people that I don't like to. If I've already gotten over in a construction zone because the arrow told me to, and then you go flying past me because you want to get 5 cars ahead of me before you have to merge, I'm one of those people who's not going to let you in.
But did you really know that you're supposed to use the zipper law when there is a
I
lot of
know.
traffic.
I still cannot figure out how that works, though. I understand that that's supposed to work faster.
It's supposed to, like a zipper law, because then it doesn't back up as far because people are just constantly moving. You have both lanes feeding into it.
But you have to have people be cooperative to let the people in, and so I think why it doesn't work here in the situations that I've seen is, in essence, we are trying to do the zipper law, but we're trying to have the zipper already zipped up long before we ever get right to that point. And I think if we all went up together equally, then maybe it would work a little faster. But I think because you have so many people zipping long before, that they don't like those, like me, they don't like those people who are flying past them, because that's how I perceive it is, really, if you would just get in line like everybody else, this would go faster. Or are you really so important that you have to be 5 cars ahead of me when we go through, or 2 or 1 or whatever? Again, we talked about perspective how many times ago, and that's my perspective.
And what I'm hearing you say is, if we had equally approached it, and I think so often the perspective is we want a level playing field.
Right.
And when we feel, even if we're not on a level playing field, when we feel there is the appearance that we're on a level playing field, then we are more apt to be willing to cooperate, compromise, see the other person's perspective. However, when we feel we are at a disadvantage, we're fighting tooth and nail for every little bit that we can. So we're really probably not willing to give at all. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's very fair, because, I think people want to feel seen as well as heard. And oftentimes, that comes along with that equal footing.
Yeah. It's a perspective. It's a balance. It's all, and so often it's our mindset. Yeah. And so part of me, as you were asking how my week had been, and I was like, well, do I really want to just like go totally unfiltered and dump, or do I want to like try to tie it into what you said? Or, I mean, I had good things happen, but it just seemed like there was a lot of luck. And so I was trying to decide how much of it was just luck and I should have just powered through it, or, it's just life. So that's why I came up with the answer I did. Yeah.
No, I hear you. And as I said, when I talked about my week, it's been up and down. Some stuff has been really good news and good outcomes for clients. And then other stuff has not been the best outcome that I was looking for, or the family was looking for. Or, there's been some personal stuff with some family members of mine that has been unexpected and not happy news. So, it's just kind of all over we've had some bumpy paths, but we've had some smooth sailing too.
So it's kind of uncharted, not much of a roadmap in some areas. Some you kind of have the gist of the direction.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. And I'll be honest, with what I do with working with families and school districts and trying to get things most, as appropriate as we can for the child. And you would think, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think, well, we have a law that directs how that should go. I say that with hesitation, though, because the law is very vague in its specifics. So it's specific and it says, you have to do X, Y, and Z, but it's very vague in how you have to do X, Y, and Z. So there's a part of me that thinks, okay, well, we've all been told in the world of education that we're supposed to do X, Y, and Z. So that part of the path is very traveled. But then there's the how that seems like every situation I'm in is going to have a different outcome. And some of that has to do with the individual student that we're trying to write the IEP for, because their needs and their unique abilities are different from every other student that I work with.
Hence why they're called individual.
Right, exactly. But I guess from my perspective, I think, okay, well, this child, for example, the big thing right now that I've been working on a lot with my clients is extended school year. And for the majority of my teaching career, if not like almost all of it, I thought extended school year and summer school were the same things. And they're not. They are frequently used interchangeably, but they're not interchangeable. Summer school is available to a lot more students because it is for those students who are needing some enrichment. Some schools do it for enrichment purposes, but most schools do it to help a child pass a subject that they were in need of passing because they didn't through the regular school year, or it's for students that needed just a little bit of extra shoring up of the skills that they received from general education, and they are general education students. Extended school year is for students who have an individualized education plan. And so there's that difference between it being available to general ed and special ed. But then the general education summer school usually is like, here's your curriculum, and this is what you're going to use for anybody that comes in, grade levels or groups of grade levels or however. But extended school year is supposed to be individualized, meaning we need to be working on goals and objectives that are specific to the child. They don't have to be the goals and objectives that were in the IEP leading up to summer. You can have different ones to work on. That's my understanding. That's what has been explained to me by people. But some of the wins this week is I had 2 students who their school district said, yes, they need extended school year, and they understood, and they are implementing it the same way that I understand it. One of those was in North Carolina. One of those was in Missouri. I also have a school district that's like, absolutely, nope, summer school and ESY are the same thing, and this is what we're offering, and the child's not eligible. And that's in Illinois.
Oh.
So
I was going to say, that sounds kind of like the fight I had for my son for his entire school.
Right. So there's, like I said, there's the very well-traveled road of here's the federal law, and then here's all the statutes and regulations. And then, so that part is pretty well-traveled, but then these how or what qualifies somebody for ESY, or how or what qualifies somebody for even an IEP is not traveled in. I mean, like, so I just feel like, it's very confusing. And sometimes we don't get to choose which path we're going down.
Correct. Much kind of ties in, that caregivers thing. It's the same thing. We have federal guidelines, we have state guidelines, we have county guidelines, and it's all guidance, because at least yours has laws. These are all guidance, and so therefore, they don't follow them. Right. Like in the same town, you can have the same type, not even separate facilities, but you're literally comparing apples to apples. and they have completely different rules, but they back it with a guidance of something or another.
Right. Yeah. So there's a lot of
So,
interpreting, not, and I guess that has to be because every person on the planet is unique to every other person on the planet. And to say that a situation has to be done. And I get that that's the same way with the IEPs too, that's why they don't tell you, they tell you the what, but they don't tell you the how, because you would have anybody who's young watching is not necessarily going to know what I'm referring to, but you would have a whole set of encyclopedias for one law. And you would have that for every single law on the books if you tried to make it specific enough for every situation. So I understand that is probably the way it has to be done. It's just frustrating and sometimes difficult and challenging to work within to get people to understand. I get very passionate and I get kind of set in I think this is the right way to do it. But trying to, and sometimes I'm able, and sometimes the other people cannot hear what I have to say. And I think it sometimes goes back to what we talked about earlier about that zipper and that equal footing, because I think sometimes when I come in and the school district learns either ahead of time or the moment I walk in that I'm going to be there, the hairs on the back of their neck stand up. Or on the flip side of that, if a parent goes into a meeting and I'm on the invitation list from the school side, they're like, well, why is this person here? I don't know who this person is. So the hairs go up. So there's that tension already.
Yeah. And as you're sharing this, and I'm thinking, and I'm like, so what do we do? What mental gymnastics does one do to be able to see the situation and not become overwhelmed? And not go, well, I've hit a roadblock, I'm not going anywhere, and I might as well just quit. Or it's my way or the highway, when sometimes that's not going to get even part of it. Where do you compromise? Where do you stand strong? Where do you stand firm? And I think there is no set answer.
No, I don't think so either.
But I mean, for myself, I feel like I have a lot of forks in the road in front of me. And I'm trying, at first I was floundering a bit in this time since we last chatted, trying to, I didn't have any maps. I don't have any maps. I have no future plans. I just know I want to be in God's will.
Right.
And the scripture I always lean into are many are the plans in a man's heart, but the Lord's purpose prevails. And, I can plan and plan, but really I just want his will and it's going to prevail. So I was like, okay. So instead, I was like, I don't want to plan, but do I want to weigh my odds? I was trying to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing or not doing. And I know there were some areas I wanted on which to focus. It became overwhelming because there were so many options and so many choices that I finally put myself in timeout. That's how I just slow the churning on the inside, slow the churning on the outside. I just put myself in timeout. And sometimes that's literally just setting myself on my bed and pushing my wheelchair away so that I can't just jump up at a moment's thought. I have to really think it. Oh, do I really want to hold on to this, to this, to this, to get to my wheelchair that I shoved far away? And then I either sit and crochet or listen to praise music or read my Bible. I don't know, just do something that is just kind of doesn't require a lot of thought, but allows me just to relax. So after putting myself in timeout, I was able to kind of refocus and realize, okay, I'm not at a roadblock. I am at a fork. And even if I make a decision, it doesn't mean that I'm stuck going that direction. It doesn't mean that once I start moving in this direction, I've burned the bridge behind me, because I haven't. It's just a step. But I have to take a step. So, and I can't beat myself up once I've taken that step. So I that was all following my timeout. I was able to think those parts of it through. Prior to that, I was just like, you know, when you're playing pinball and you have a ball bouncing around there, and then sometimes you'll hit something and it'll drop a whole bunch of balls, and you're just trying to keep all of them up, but realistically, there's no way you're going to keep them all from falling through between the flippers. But you sure are trying, and it's hard to focus because you're trying. Are you focusing all of them up there, or are you focusing on where your flippers are? And so I was at a moment where I had to choose on what I was going to focus, what the important thing was, and allow the rest to fall through. And that didn't mean I was a failure because the rest of the balls fell through the flippers. It just meant this is what I believe on what I'm supposed to focus.
Yep, exactly.
So with that, I had a little bit more peace, and I was able to take myself out of timeout and move in a different direction.
Yeah. And as you were talking about that, I was smiling and nodding pretty vigorously, because just in the last couple of weeks, there's been a shift in my thinking, and I've come to that realization that there are very few things that are set in stone forever. Even if we write an IEP and we don't like everything about it, there's nothing to say that we can't meet again in a month or a week or 6 months and look at things again. And last night, Violet wanted to paint my fingernails, and so she picked the color, and I think she did a great job. I'll show you, but and it's not a color that I would have chosen for myself. And she had some other colors, and she was like, she finished one hand, and then she was like, okay, now I'm going to do the other hand in a totally different color. I was like, okay, go ahead. And she just looked at me. I said, well, if I don't like it, I can take it off. You know, and now maybe in the past I would have been like, well, don't put another whole color on my other hand, because, you know, that's a waste, because then if I don't like it, I'm gonna have to take it off. And I would have gone down this whole weird path. And I'm like, no, I'll just take it off if I don't like it. It's, you know, and I actually said the words to her, we can change it. And one of the questions, and I don't know if you saw how I worded our topic for today, but I said, if you go down the wrong path, can you go back and start over? And it's maybe not starting over, but it's maybe bridging from where you are.
You can't go back, but you can change direction.
Right. Yeah.
Because you will never be able to go back to exactly the same moment.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, because you'll have new information and you can't go back in time.
Yeah.
So,
unless you're on like Back to the Future or something like that.
And to my knowledge, no one has developed that for real yet.
Oh, okay.
I know.
Oh, by the way, do you see the boy?
I do.
He got a haircut. Doesn't he look good?
He does. He looks very peaceful and relaxed.
He's kind of bony and heavy, though.
Jonas is laying next to me in his bed, but he's not a cuddler like Cooper is.
Well, Cooper wasn't with me, but the girls just decided to go on a walk. So I want to share this.
Okay.
This concept of, you know, road and everything. So I know that things I've tried in the past have not worked with my daughter in implementing some type of responsibilities within the house. And they tend to end in lots of arguments and frustration on both of our parts. And I had opportunity to speak with someone who has a son who has some different abilities. And she gave me some ideas. And so I talked it over with Allison, and I said, okay, you come up with some ideas and I'm going to come up with some ideas. So in essence, we have task choices, not a
Got it.
chore chart, task choices. And
Mhm.
she has to do this many.
Mhm.
During the school time worth days,
Right.
those
Right.
days, each day she has that many, plus she has a couple things that are just a daily thing. And if she gets them completed by the end of Friday with Fran Day,
Uh-huh.
she gets a bonus when she gets her weekly money. If she doesn't, on recording day, she has to complete everything that wasn't completed, and there's no electronics. So
Right.
it's all on her. I don't have to tell her, and there's a time that these have to be completed each day.
Mhm.
And so it's in her lap now. And
That's awesome.
but the thing is, there is no roadmap for this per se.
Right.
My friend gave me some suggestions, but we both agree this is a work in progress and this isn't set in stone, and there might need to be some changes. In the past, if it was written, that was all that could happen because she's very concrete, black
Right.
and white. So I used to have to write into contracts we would do with her, things may change. You need to be flexible, so that it was
Right.
literally in there. And she's done really well with it in some areas, and in other areas. But part of it is our expectations,
Mhm.
and I have to realize my expectations are not hers. So a bit ago we were button heads, and so I just casually rolled over and said, "Can we just talk for a second?" And I said, "Okay." And then I shared my point of view, and I said, and then she shared hers, and I said, "So can you see my frustration?" And she acknowledged that, and I said, "I can see why you're frustrated with me," and we talked it out some, and I said, "So let's try to reboot and move forward." And it took me realizing my frustration to do that, because if I hadn't, we probably would have kept butting heads. And
Right.
I don't know if she could do that.
Right.
If that's in her makeup. So I realized that I have to continually check the map, check the paperwork, see if we're on the same page, because I think that's where a lot of it comes in, or other. There are so many variables, but
Right.
it was a aha moment for me. Kind of was, okay. Suck it in, admit that you're not right all the time, and because I
Yeah.
know I'm not, but it's really hard as we navigate this road of adult daughter living in the house / with responsibilities.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that was my direction with that.
And we're still actually trying to figure that out with our daughter too, because Violet's 21. She's now going to do. She has a summer class that she's in. She has another summer class that she'll take, but they're both online. And then she has the fall semester, and I don't remember. I think she has this many online classes and this many in person, and then she's done. So because she has this many online classes and her college is close enough that for that couple of days a week where she has to go for that in-person class, she's not going to live on campus. Mm-hmm. She's either going to stay with us or she's going to go like halfway between here and school and stay with my mom. And so we're all trying to figure out, okay, she's an adult. She lives on her own. She has lived on her own, or technically, I mean, if you count living on your own as at college in a dorm, but I mean, basically, so yeah, it's like, okay, what are our expectations? What are her expectations? What is fair for both of us to have as expectations? And yeah, just trying to write the map as we go along. And
so in essence, you're charting a map rather than reading the map sometimes.
Yeah. Yep. And thinking about traveling and paperwork, you want to have notes of whether they're mental notes or they're actually on paper notes or, in a electronic form. of what went right and what went wrong, so that, if you did go down a path and you found, and I know this is funny because when I was growing up, I always thought quicksand was going to be like a big deal. Like, do you remember watching shows where like everybody was always in quicksand and they were like, oh, we're in quicksand, save me. So let's say you went down a path and there was quicksand. And so you want to make sure that you've noted somewhere, don't go down that path because there's quicksand down there.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to also, take those, like I said, whatever kind of notes, so that you can look back. And when it comes to IEPs, a lot of that stuff is already written for you. It's just a matter of saving it. Hold on to IEPs, hold on to notes, hold on to emails, hold on to text messages. One of the cases that I had this week was a family was given compensatory services, which means that the school district did not provide what they were supposed to have provided for the child as far as their IEP was concerned 2 school years ago.
Okay.
So even though, that's over and done with, the school still owed this family those compensatory minutes. It wasn't really anything that I had, because I didn't see any paperwork. The parent, I started telling them, like, we'll look for this and look for this. And she was like, yeah, she says, when I pulled up my, I looked for a schedule from the beginning of that year and the end of that year, and they were very different. And I don't know why they were so different. So she took that stuff to the school district and they were like, oh, yeah, no, we were negligent. So, holding on to that kind of stuff and reviewing that information. We had a meeting. I was in a meeting yesterday that was a lot of hours. Probably one of the longest meetings I've had in my whole life, both as a teacher and as a coach. And I felt like a very good meeting. Everybody seemed like they wanted to work together, and we really talked about things and we really discussed things. And but a lot of that had to do with the fact that the parents had their ducks in a row, so to speak, as far as, the paperwork and their concerns and everything that they needed. But even some of the people in the meeting were like, oh, yeah, now that I look at this a little bit closer and I think about it, yeah, this should change. This present level should be a little bit different, or yeah, we can change this goal. And these were these goals and these present levels that they had written themselves within this past school year. And so, sometimes, again, having that balance and giving that grace, which we talk about often,
Right.
that, especially after this last school year.
True. And as you're sharing that, and I'm hearing you talk about the meeting, and I'm still reflecting a bit on the discussion I had just with my daughter prior to getting on with you. Expectations. I'm thinking on how often educators have expectations, parents have expectations, students have expectations, and a lot of times they're not lining up, and that's where the frustration is. And so I think the best way to alleviate confusion is communication.
Mm-hmm.
And so often the communication is lacking. And like you were saying previously, want to be seen and heard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
So how does one get seen and heard?
I don't know. I mean, I know how to help parents be heard at an IEP meeting and how to be seen. Going back to the road construction and the zipper, I don't know. The only way you could make yourself seen in that situation is, well, you wouldn't be seen, you would be heard. Honk your horn.
You flash your lights, I guess.
Flash your lights, pull over, if you see somebody coming up behind you and they're going to do that cutting you off thing, then you can pull over.
So there it is, the perspective, cutting you off or zippering in.
Right. Yeah. And I guess technically that it's not, I guess maybe that was a Freudian slip, but I would almost be cutting them off if I cut over, into their lane and wouldn't let them get in front of me.
Like the semis do?
Like the semis do. Yeah. Yeah. I get kind of pleased when the semi does that, because I'm like, good, now nobody else can do what they're not supposed to be doing. And I'll be honest. I've had a couple of situations where, for whatever reason, I did not see the signs that there was road construction and I had to get over. So I have, been traveling on a multi-lane highway, and at like the last minute, I literally had to cut in front of a semi. And I had passengers and they were like, oh, but we all lived. It was fine.
I'm glad you lived, or I may be talking to a ghost right now.
Right. That would be really weird. Very strange. Yeah. But so I try to remember that kind of thing, and I do find, I think everywhere else, if I'm just in regular traffic and there's not construction, even if it's that, the slow moving traffic and you got that person who's in and then you got somebody else who gets out, and they're always trying to get in that lane, it seems like, that goes faster. I've changed my perspective about that. And, just being able to give them grace and be okay, they I don't know what's going on in their life. They may need to be doing what they're doing. But yeah, still, when it comes to that road construction changing down to one lane thing, I still have trouble with that one.
Yeah. I think I struggled more with it, and then I watched a bunch of different, it was some summers ago where there was a big push in a couple of states where they were really trying to help implement the zipper. And I really watched it, and I watched the dynamic of it and watched how it really did change the flow of traffic if you truly did a zipper rather than try to all merge way back. And then so I thought, okay, well, so I guess I had better understanding. So it gave me a different perspective now as I approach this. And I wanted to go back to, I was thinking about seen and heard. And I know a lot of times my daughter doesn't feel heard.
Yeah.
Because when I can finally get her to talk, she'll go, "You're not listening to me." And I'm like, I have been, but have I been? Have I been hearing you, or is it just going in or out? So
you've been listening, but have you actively been hearing?
I've started repeating what she says to me. This is what I hear you saying.
Yeah.
Am I correct, or am I not hearing? Is this not what you meant when you said that? Right. And if it's not, can you help me out and tell me? Because otherwise she just shuts down, and then I'm left sitting there, and she's mad, and I'm sitting there and I'm getting frustrated because I really want to understand, but she won't talk. So then I'm just mad because she won't talk. And it's like, well, that's not helping anything.
Right. Exactly.
That's like her trying to get into the other lane as we're trying to merge, and I'm not letting her because she won't talk. So I'm just going to sit there, and no one's going to move, and no one behind us is going to be able to move. We're all stuck.
Right. Yeah.
So that was just one of my random thoughts. But I'm going to go off on a chipmunk trail. Are we okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. So where I went with the off-roading thing, because I have that super cool power chair that can do a lot of things, but it can't do everything. And as I've discovered, like this winter, it really can't do snow. I really thought it could, but it can't. I got stuck trying to shovel snow.
I mean, we've had a lot of snow, but
I was trying to shovel snow, and
Yeah.
It was not the wisest choice, but I really thought it could, but now I know it can't. And then I looked at the little controller, and it actually has, those little circles that have a slash through it.
Uh-huh.
It's through raindrops, but it also had snowflakes. So I was like, oh, okay.
Oh. Live and learn.
I wonder if it's because of the battery or because of the power controller's not supposed to go up. Because I covered the controller. Right. But anyway.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy pushing it to its limits because it gives me freedom.
Right.
To go and do things. And so sometimes, much like you were saying about the quicksand, I've learned, if it's really gravelly, I'm probably going to get stuck. So I probably shouldn't do that. So I'm a little more hesitant now because I have gotten stuck. So I take my previous experiences when I go off-roading to make wiser choices and decisions. So I think there's nothing wrong with any of the paths, whether we stay on the well-beaten path, we go on the less traveled, or we make our own path. I think it's the choices, making wise choices on any of those paths is what will dictate the success of the direction in which we're traveling.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that.
And it doesn't mean that, because I'm going back, even as I'm thinking of it, I know where you'll go with it, is if I make a mistake, it doesn't mean it's a mistake. It just means that filament won't work.
That's right. That is very true. Mistakes to me are just mistakes if we don't learn from them. And that is what Edison always did. He always learned that this wasn't the right filament until 500 or 1,000 tries later, whatever that, I remember it was a large number and I get confused, but yeah, it was always, well, that one didn't work. Okay, I'm going to try a new one.
Mm-hmm.
So he learned from it and he moved on.
And so I guess we're never stop learning.
Right.
And life is a journey of experiences and seasons and opportunities. Or we can look at life as something, a drudgery, and it has to be done. And you just power through it. And there's nothing wrong with powering through it. But if that's all you ever do, you're going to burn out.
Yeah. And you asked a while ago, how does one not become overwhelmed when they hit that roadblock and just say, well, that's it. I'm done. I can't go any further. And I think we've done a good job, kind of like we talked about, giving different options, like building a bridge to somewhere else, or, if it's a roadblock, and this is actually a way that I have described a specific learning disability to my students for many years, is in the typical brain or even in their brains, there are a lot of things that are straight paths and we just get there, but then in somebody who has a specific learning disability, because with that in specific eligibility, it's like sometimes that path is very clear and you can just take that straight path. But then there are other times when, for whatever reason, that path isn't clear. And so we take a turn, and then we take a turn, and then we take a turn. And then maybe we're at our destination, or maybe we have to take some curves and some more turns, but we still get to the destination. And I think that's the same thing, is we have to, when we hit a roadblock in life, stop, assess, and think about, okay, I can't go this way anymore. So how am I going to continue to move forward?
Mm-hmm.
And when I was saying that, I was thinking about the Going on a Bear Hunt book. Do you know that story?
Except mine was going on a lion hunt.
Okay, yeah. You can't go through it. Can't go over it. You gotta swim, or you gotta
You gotta
climb,
go
or you
around
gotta
it.
swish, or you gotta whatever. And so I think, we have to pause, I think, like you did, like you said you did, and think about, okay, how can I go forward on a different path?
And I think, unfortunately, society sees the pause, the time to reflect, to think, to work it out, as sometimes a failure, as a fault, rather than a positive step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Because like when I put myself in timeout, sometimes I feel like that's a failure. That, oh, I'm resorting to, oh, I got to put myself in timeout. But in reality, it's a good thing, because I'm allowing myself to reboot, refresh, and refocus.
Yep.
So that I do not randomly waste time and flounder.
Right.
So
And I mean,
when I could see it as that, I do much better. But sometimes I still see it as oh, here I am in timeout again. I'm a failure.
but everything needs time, downtime. I mean, you can't, and we've talked about this, you have to put gas in the car. You
Yeah,
have
well,
to
I
charge
try
the
to
battery.
put gas in my car while it's still moving all the time. I don't.
That's going to
I
explode
do
the car.
like the race cars. We don't want to stop long. We just want to like fuel up and fly. The pit
Right.
stops should be as quick as possible.
But have you ever noticed that even with those fast moving race cars, they still have to stop, because they still could not maintain. I mean, even if it's okay, they got your pit stop and then you're back out on the track. I mean, they're still only going for a few hours at that high rate of speed with those, almost instantaneous pit stops. And then they have to stop. They have to full stop. They still have to.
I miss that point most of the time. But
that's why we have each other.
Right. But I wanted to say something as you were talking. I don't mean to take off from the race car, but I wanted to tell you this thing that I was visualizing as you were. Yeah, I have lots of chipmunks. I was there. As you were talking about turns and everything, I was visualizing. I took it with a lot of people like to go from A to B.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how I've always described it with my daughter. We can't go A to B. There's no way we can go to A, B. We generally do the whole alphabet, and a lot of times it's kind of like alphabet soup. You're not really going directly A, B, C, D either. So I've learned that that's okay. And there's some people that don't understand that, and they're like, well, why don't you just da 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 and da 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 with her? It doesn't work that way.
Right.
Because I have those maps from prior when she was younger, and I've taken those notes, and I know that I really don't want to go down that path, because it not only has quicksand, it also has poison ivy, and it has lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my. So I know there are certain paths that I'm not going to take.
Right.
And that's okay. And I've realized I don't have to explain that to other people. If they choose or they cannot understand it, that's on them. Because I have to advocate for my daughter and help her reach her fullest potential.
Yeah. And there are, from my understanding, so many families who have someone with unique abilities, special needs, whatever term we're going to use today, that can't take the most traveled path. And for however long that they've had these unique abilities in their house, they've been on a completely different path. It may run parallel to the one that is the most traveled, but it still doesn't look exactly the same. It has maybe more rest stops on it. or maybe more detours or, you know, whatever, but U-turns. Yeah. You know, everybody's eventually going to get to the same point in life. Unfortunately, I mean, it all ends at some point. So enjoy the journey as much as possible, and try to keep blinders on. I mean, you know, you're a horse rider. I'm familiar with horses. You know, put those blinders on that we sometimes put on our horses in order to keep them from looking at what's going on the side. And try not to compare ourselves to somebody else's journey. Or, you know, I mean, yeah, if they get really far ahead, even the blinders can't keep your eyes from focusing on that person or that group or whatever that's, you know, that far ahead of you, but you don't know what they had to go through to get there. So,
and that comes back to the grace, having grace for those around us, and having grace for yourself. I'm finding I can apply a lot of principles for everyone around me, but they tend not to apply for myself. It has that little asterisk, does not apply to Fran. And I'm having to reevaluate that. What makes me so special, they don't apply to me.
Right.
So
that's a very good point.
We are in that way.
Right. So you can't see it, but like if I'm pointing, how many fingers are pointing that way? Just a number, right? Yeah. How many are pointing the other way?
C.
Actually, D, because there should be A, B, C, D.
Oh, your thumb's pointing up.
Oh, well, I can't. Okay. It's another direction. But the idea is there were more pointing towards, you know, if I'm pointing and saying you should do da-da-da, or I'm going to apply this principle to da-da-da, there's more pointing back towards me that I need to look at my own life, and I need to give, like you said, you got to give yourself the grace too. And I think I'm very similar. I think I offer that, you know, well, I know you're not perfect. I don't expect you to be perfect. It's okay that you made a mistake, but man, I hate it when I make a mistake. And I really hate it when I make a mistake and it's evident to lots of people around me. You know, that's still to this day, that's still hard for me to deal with, but I am so much better at dealing with it than what I used to be.
I struggle with I mean, I'm okay. I know that I can't be perfect. So I'm okay in that area. What I struggle with is when I have to rely on other people to carry out something for me, and I feel like it's a direct reflection of me if they don't carry it out, that I was not able to communicate, teach, guide, help, show them to do it. And then I feel like people look at the end result and go, well, Fran failed. Even though I can't control other people. And so, but I have learned that that's not true. Right. But it's still occasionally, if it's something that I have to pass on to someone else to allow them to do, I'm like, and I get all in pins and needles and stressed out about it. I'm like, goodness gracious, friend, knock it off.
Yeah.
Walk away. Don't look. It's not on you. You've done all you can, and you've equipped them the best you can, and you have to leave it.
Right. Yeah, it is. It is tough. I find myself in there too. You know, I mean, we do it. Like I said, I think we're very similar in that we extend things to other people, whatever that thing is that we're extending. And we often don't give ourselves that same leeway or that same grace. But I have worked on that, as far as I've caught myself a couple times saying to myself, if this was Fran, or if this was Violet, or if this was your mom, or if this was Kevin, or whomever, if they had done this, what would your reaction be? Now, I don't catch myself that often doing it when I'm being really super hard on myself. But on those times, I'm like, okay, you have to be okay with who you are, just like you're okay with all the people that I just mentioned. And I wouldn't think less of any of those people that I just mentioned for doing, what I had just done. You're human. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to fall. You're going to disappoint me. You're going to whatever. It's okay. It's life. We move forward. One tiny little step at a time, or one giant step at a time.
Mm-hmm. You're right. And sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was thinking that there is some sort of phrase or saying, and I don't know who to attribute it to, that as long as it is something like, as long as you are moving forward, you're making progress. Or as long as you're moving, you're making progress, or something along those lines. So I try to keep that in mind too. When I am stuck, it's like, okay, I may not be looking like I'm physically moving forward, but I'm thinking about it. I'm resting. I'm trying to get the energy to move forward. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I think so. I have to think on that one. Because I'm like, well, if we're resting, but what if we're moving backward because we had to go backward because we hit the quicksand? So is that a failure then? Or are we making progress because
you're making progress because you're not in the quicksand?
So as long as you're moving, perhaps. Not
as long as you're
moving, or as long as you're making progress.
As long as you're still going in the direction that you need to go in.
But it may not appear you're going in that direction.
That's true. See, I told you I wasn't going to get the saying right. I know what I'm thinking in my head.
I know what you're saying, but even I think I know the saying, but I don't know if I agree with it, because if we apply everything about which we've spoken, it wouldn't line up. So I'm trying to think on this one. We'll have to revisit this.
Yeah. Okay. One last bit of wisdom. What have you got?
I just wanted to tie in, as you were saying, I think the beauty of it for me personally is I have a really strong network of people around me that speak truth to me, even boldly unfiltered truth, when I'm being very hypercritical of myself. And I think often we're afraid to speak that truth to one another, but sometimes it's the greatest gift we can give to another is the truth.
Do you listen though? When they tell you, if they think you're being hypercritical of yourself, even if they say, do you stop and go, because right.
From whom it's coming, yes. It depends on from whom it's coming, but from those about whom I was speaking, yes, I do.
Right. Okay. I mean, because there was
someone walked off the street and said that to me, I might be like, yeah, whatever.
See, that's the opposite of me. I always used to think that because of the people that were around me, well, you have to love me. They were my parents, or they were my family members, or, Kevin, or, like, oh, well, you have to be nice to me. But if a stranger said something to me, then I'm like, oh, well, you don't know me. So it must hold more water than it does when my loved one says it.
Have you changed that thought process?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But there's still, I think I do still have a little bit of that remnant. Like if somebody who doesn't know me, or somebody that I don't have a known expectation to think a certain way about me, says something to me, and then I go, oh, well, I don't know why, but it just, but I'm working on it. I'm trying to give everybody equal weight.
Got it.
On their compliments, or of their, be nicer to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we have to go. It's time.
Okay. So my final word is, it doesn't matter what fork you choose it boldly and enjoy it.
All right. I think that's a great way to end it. All right, everybody. We'll see you next Friday.